and welcome to this class today. My name is Pharmacist Innocent Ekeleme, and I'll be taking you through this training. We will be doing anatomy and pharmacology, HCM 407. And I want you to listen attentively as we go through this training today. Our class today will take us 40 minutes, and at the end of the class, you will be unmuted to ask some questions you may have in mind to ask for this class. Okay. So, as I earlier mentioned, we'll be looking at anatomy and at pharmacology also. The key things we'll be discussing are we'll give an introduction to both of these courses. We'll do the sense organ. We have a training on the sense organ. We'll look at the different systems in the body, the circulatory system, the lymphatic system, the respiratory digestive system, the urinary system, reproductive system, the endocrine system. Then we're going to discuss the pharmacology for inflammation and pain. We will also look at endocrine pharmacology and chemotherapeutics. We'll be looking at pharmacology of the respiratory system. So these are some of the things that we are going to cover in this course curriculum. So we're going to run 5 classes. So today is the first. We have 4 more left. So let's start with a brief the definition of anatomy. What is anatomy? Anatomy came from the Greek word anatomy, which means dissection. So it's principally a branch of biology with the study of structures of organisms and their parts. So it looks at organisms, study the structure of organisms, and look at each individual part of the organism. So anatomy is a branch of natural science. It also deals with structural organization of living things. It's an old science. Aristotle and those people started it many years ago. And it has its beginning in prehistoric time. Now, there is what we call gross anatomy, which is the macroscopic anatomy. There is the microscopic anatomy, the anatomy you study with the microscope. Mostly the study of the cells, mostly the in-depth study of the cell. Those are microscopic because you cannot see the cell with your naked eye. Then there's what we call the macroscopic anatomy, which is the study of the body parts visible to the naked eye, such as the heart, the bone, and the eyes and co. So what we will discuss in this training, we will cover mostly of the macroscopic anatomy, not the microscopic anatomy. So what pharmacology, this is anatomy and pharmacology. So what's pharmacology? Pharmacology is a science of drugs and their effects on biological system. The human body, the animal body is a biological system. So pharmacology looks at what is the effect of these drugs. How does these drugs affect this biological system? What do they trigger? Okay, what do they enhance? What do they reduce? What is their impact? Maybe if a patient has malaria, we give the person an anti-malaria drug. Let's use artemether lumefantrine. What will be the impact of artemether lumefantrine to the body structures? Although we are targeting the organism, falciparum, malaria falciparum, protozoa, but since it's in the human system, in vitro, the human system, then there is need to understand each impact on the human system. So that's what pharmacology looks about. Okay. Now, a drug is active ingredient, as you know. A drug is an active medicinal ingredient. Okay. It can be formulated into different forms. So a drug can come either in tablet, it can come in capsule, it can come in other delivery method. You can have things like elixir, linctus, emulsions, topical, injectables, and different delivery modalities we use for drugs. Okay, so the Medicine Act of 1968, British Medicine Act, because Nigeria, we use the British pharmacopoeia. Okay, the Medical Act of 1968 refers drugs as medicinal products, but it can also be naturally occurring. There are drugs that are naturally occurring in plants and in animals. For example, hormones. Hormones occur in animals, hormones occur in humans. Okay, so those are drugs. It can be used as drug to elicit a desired therapeutic action. Also, it can occur in nature. Okay, you can see example caffeine from coffee, alcohol, synthetic chemical marketed for therapeutic activities. For example, aspirin and substance used for recreation, cannabis. Okay, so drugs can occur naturally. So now we want to look at the human body. Very interesting thing to look at. Now, we mentioned that we are going to cover the human organ. So now, an organ is a self-contained group of tissues. They are tissues in the body, but self-contained, and they perform specific function in the body. I'm going to go further down to discuss from cell, because the way the human body is, from the granular level, you have the cell, you have the tissue, you have the organ, you have the system, then you have the body. Okay, so that's the way we move. Okay, so but we are focusing on the organ, but we just give a brief definition of the system to still refresh our mind. So the heart and the liver and the stomach, they're examples of organ in human. The word organ came from the Latin word organum, which means instrument. Is a Greek word, organum, which refers to musical instrument. So organs are found in most plants and animals. So let's go back to refresh our mind of where we are coming from. Okay, there we have the cell. There are 4 different kinds of level of organization in multicellular organism. Now remember, organism, we have unicellular organism, we have multicellular organism. From the way we call it unicellular organism, one cell. Amoeba, one cell. Multicellular organism that have many cells. So some organisms may have 1 cell, some may have 10 cells, some may have 20 cells, some may have cells in trillions. Like the human body, human being have, an average person have 37.2 million, 2 trillion cells. That's amazing. 37.2 trillion cells. Okay, so is all these cells in different levels? The cells will now come and meet up, and the one that looked alike, they work together, they form a tissue. Then tissues will come, and form an organ, and then organ that are interrelated will now be classified as system. So that's the way the human body is. So cells make up the most basic level of organization in the body, the cells. Okay, so there are different types of cells, and some cells are specialized, some are not specialized, some are simple, some are complex. The cell is the building block of a living organism. Is the minutest functional unit of a living organism. After the cell, coalition of cells will now give us what we have called the tissue. So when different tissues, they work together, they are in similar structure, similar function. Okay, this tissue in the human body, tissues like you have the muscle is a tissue, epithelial tissue, you have the connective tissue, you have the nervous tissue. These are different tissues. So when this tissue all harness and work together, they will give rise to an organ. An organ, as stated before, they are a group of tissue working together to perform a certain function. Please take note of that. Organs perform certain function. Organ system represents, so from organ, so when you have different organs working together, we can now call it organ system. And that's the highest level of organization in the human body. Okay, so in organ system, they're made up of different organs or group of organs that work together to carry out a certain function. For example, we have the digestive system. In the digestive system, you have different organs like esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine. Now, all these are different organs, but they work together, they collaborate to form what? The digestive system. So to reiterate again, we have cells. From cells, we have cells that come together that look alike. You have give us the tissues, and tissues that come together look alike, function alike. They give us the organs. Then organs can collaborate, function alike, work together to give us the system. So that's the way the human body is built. So now we're going to go further to look at the sense organ. In the scope of our discussion, we look at the sense organ, we look at the different system. It's not every organ we are going to look at in the body, okay? Even the sense organ, we just give us a general overview based on the scope of this course. So the sense organ, as the word apply, sense. It helps to sense. Okay, so the sense organ, we have a 5 sense organ. And if you look at the diagram here, you will see it here. You see this organ. That's the eye. The eye is a sense organ. It senses light. And as it senses light, the signal goes to the brain, interpret, goes to the sensory organs, to go to the body to, for decision to be made. Okay. So the eye is working well. So when NEPA takes light, the eye senses, oh, no light, there is darkness. The eye will now transmit that information to the brain. The brain will now interpret, okay, there is darkness. What do we do? Then the brain will now instruct. That's the way the body was. Instruct this side, instruct this side, and they take action. So eye is one of the sense organ. So we have the nose, one of the sense organ. The nose dictates flavors, sweet and bitter flavors. It dictates it, it sends it to the brain. The other organ is the tongue. The tongue dictates the taste of things, okay, the texture, the taste, and also the both taste, texture, and also status as per temperature wise. So when the tongue detects it, it also sends it. Then you have sound. Sounds, it comes from where the auditory nerve, the ear. Okay, like I'm talking now, you are hearing me. Why? Your ear is working. As the sound comes, your ear takes it, auditory nerves transmit it to the brain. There are people that have ears, you have physical ears, but they have problem with this auditory nerve. No matter the sound you make, it will not be transmitted to the brain. There are people that their ear is what they have this ear, then their auditory nerve is working, but the center in the brain that interprets the auditory brain center is having issue. So no matter the sound their ear receives, no matter how the auditory nerve takes it, when it gets to the brain, it cannot be well interpreted. And because it's not well interpreted, there won't be proper signal sent to the system. Okay. Then you have the skin. The skin is the largest organ in the body. The skin is an organ. The skin is the organ of what? Touch, hurt, pain, and all those things. One more thing about the ear is this. The ear beyond sound is also responsible for movement and balance of the head. That's very interesting. So if the ear, the auditory system is not working well, people will, as they are walking, they'll be missing their steps. So these are the 5 sense organs in the body. So the sense organ, they are known as the windows of the brain. They are the windows, they are the channel part of the brain. because they dictate and send nerve impulses and changes to the central nervous system. So we have the central nervous system, we have the peripheral nervous system. Now, the sense organ, they are the windows of the brain. They dictate, they sense sound. When they dictate it, sound, different impulses, what they do is this, they will channel this impulse to the central nervous system. Information reaching the cerebrum of the brain result what in conscious sensation. So when that information, these are signals, when you get to the cerebrum now interprets it to mean that this place, oh, there is this feeling, this place is hot. Then the person it interprets it, send the sensation, conscious sensation, then the individual can take action. So now there are receptors. There are receptors in all these 5 senses. The receptors, they receive environmental stimuli. When they receive it, they will change it to nerve impulses and they will transmit it through the system, the nervous system, as impulses. And as these impulses get to the cerebrum, they are now decoded and interpreted. It's just like when we make phone call. When you make phone call, the wire in the cable is transmitted as an impulse. It's now when it gets to the receiving source is interpreted. Okay. So there are types of receptors. There is the photoreceptor. From the word photo, photo is light, from the word photon, which is light. So photoreceptor, they detect light. Those receptors are found in the eye. There is pain or sensitive receptor. Pain receptor to chemical release to damage tissue or excessive stimulus or pressure or heat. So these pain receptors, they are found where? On your skin. They are the one that receive signals on the skin. There's also thermoreceptors. This one, they sense temperature. Hypothalamus and the skin, they have thermoreceptors. There is also chemoreceptors, chemical receptors. These are responsible for taste and smell in the nose. So the nose and tongue, you have the chemoreceptors. Hypothalamus in the brain and the skin, you have the thermoreceptors. Then there is mechanoreceptors. This says pressure. Why are you pushing me? That your hand is strong. That your hand is painful now. Why is somebody saying that? Because the mechanoreceptor have sensed the pressure. You know, there are people that when they shake you, you'll be wondering, is it human being that shaked you, or is it iron, a robot that shaked you? So it's the mechanoreceptor in your skin. And also mechanoreceptor is also help in hearing in your ears. So the mechanoreceptors are found on the skin and the ears. So what do? They help to sense pressure, and they help to identify touching. Oh, that was a good touch. Oh, that's don't touch me that way. All those stuffs. Okay. Then, so let's just briefly look at the 5 senses. We are not going to go deep into it. We'll just give a general overview. Okay. So the ear, the ear has 2 sensory functions. 1, hearing. 2, maintaining balance and equilibrium. So these are the 2 sensory functions of the ear. So the ear now, we have 3 parts in the ear. This is the outer region. Okay. This is the outer region. All these places. This is the middle ear. And this is the inner ear. So outer region gets signal, transmit through the middle, manage in this place, transmit to the inner ear where you have the cochlea, then you go through the hearing nerve, the auditory nerve, then it will move to the brain. Okay. So the outer ear and the middle ear, These and these are for hearing. The inner ear is for hearing and balance. So when something goes wrong with the inner ear, then the balance, the individual balance will be affected. So nose, as I say, we are not going into the detail of what is the complex, the tympanic membrane and all those things. It's not within the scope of our discussion. The nose is the organ of the body that is what involved in respiratory and smell. You see this guy, fantastic nose. So this kind of nose can take enough air, okay, and take enough smell, just on a lighter note. So the nose is involved in respiratory and smell. The nose have chemoreceptor located in the nasal cavity. As I mentioned earlier on, you have chemoreceptor in the nasal cavity. Okay, because these smells and taste, they're also chemical. When something is smelling like poo-poo, that's ammonia. Ammonia have the smell that is repulsive, like urine smell. Okay, so this smell, they are all chemicals. Good smell, chemical. Bad smell, chemical. That's why when you get some butane and the benzo and the alkaline and mix them together, you have beautiful fragrance, beautiful perfumes. Okay, so they are chemicals. So the nose, you have chemoreceptors that are located in the nasal cavity. So let's look at it. So this is the nose. You have the brain, the nasal cavity. Now you have the mucus here. This is the nose, this is the base, the mucus. You have the cilia, the hairs in the nose, the mucus. What's the function of the mucus? The mucus is to keep the environment moist. The mucus is also to reduce the entrance of microorganisms into this system. That's the way God has designed it. Fantastic, so that there will be reduction of microorganism penetration. So these are the cilia, and this is the chemoreceptor, inside the nose. Now the chemoreceptor, they have epithelial cells. Then there is the bone. Then there is the olfactory bulb. Okay, so this the smell that is coming is transmitted. It's transmitted as signals. Okay, so you have an action potentially generated, and then the nasal cavity, then it goes to the brain. Then the brain interprets it and say, wow, this fragrance is good. Buy this perfume. When you go to buy another perfume, as you puff it, it goes through here, through the cilia, the chemoreceptor. They transmit it as a signal. When it gets to the signal, the action potential get to the nasal cavity, and you say, no, I don't like this fragrance. Okay. So the area of chemoreceptor in the nasal cavity is known as the olfactory region, chemoreceptor in the nasal cavity. This region has olfactory nerves. The message of the smell is carried to the brain by what? The olfactory nerve. So the olfactory nerve is very important in a person's nose, okay, for carrying message to the brain. So we look at the tongue briefly. The tongue is one of the most important organ of speech and nutrition. Organ of speech and nutrition. So two things the tongue helps us do: speech, communication, discussion, interaction, then nutrition. Okay, eating. So you look at the surface of the tongue, you see it's rough. The tongue have the large taste board and the small taste board. Okay, so on this surface, you have things that are protruding, these These things are papilla. Okay, they are papilla. The tongue is covered with papilla. Okay, so this papilla, you now have taste receptors or taste board within the papilla. So the papilla houses the taste board. So when you put something in your mouth, most of you have eaten today, or even if you've not eaten today, you ate yesterday, or you drank water. Okay. This bud gets it. This papilla is received in your mouth. Then the papilla, inside the papilla, there are taste pods. So the third bud will now communicate it to the brain. The brain will interpret. And the brain will say, wow, I think I like it. Add more. Or no, 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 I'm satisfied. So the one that is more complex is the human eye. The human eye have two main structures. You have the eye sphere, then you have the accessory structures. So you have the eye sphere, the eyelid, the pupil, you have the sclera, all these accessory structures, the sclera, the iris, the limbus. Okay. So let's look at the structure of the eye sphere. Now, so if you look at this is like the eye cut into two. It consists of the sclera, that's the outer region. This is the sclera of the eye, the outer region. Then you have the choroid. The choroid is in between the sclera and the retina. This region, the very, very liquid region, liquid area is the retina. Okay, so the eye sphere structure has the sclera, choroid, and the retina. So we look at each of these and discuss. So the sclera is the part of the sclera in the front eye is called the cornea. This is the sclera. You know, I say this is the sclera, the external. Okay, so this is the sclera. So inside the sclera, you have in the front part of the sclera is the cornea. What is the work of the cornea? The cornea allows the entering of light. So as light comes from this source, the cornea allows the entering of the light. And behind in the cornea, you have the lens. The lens, you see the lens here? So the lens will now focus the light onto the proper photoreceptors. There are photoreceptors behind here. So when the cornea allows the light to come, it gets to the lens. The lens will now focus it to the photoreceptors. So if there is problem with the lens, then the person will have problem with seeing. So there are people that need to go for cornea. Even this cornea can degenerate as people grow old or as a result of some diseases. So there are people that do cornea transplant, where they remove this entire cornea and now put another cornea, even lens. Okay, so that's the sclera. We say there is the sclera, there is the choroid. So let's look at the choroid. Okay, so the choroid is this pink colored area. Okay, so just inside the sclera is the choroid. Okay, from the color you will know that the choroid has blood vessels. Okay, it has blood vessels, so it contains a lot of blood vessels. Okay, so at the front of the choroid layer is the iris. This is the choroid. Here is the choroid. Then this is the front of it. You have the iris. Okay, so the iris is very, very important. Okay, is the colored part of the eye. See it here. You see the colored part of the eye. Some people have their own looks like, some people like, they say their own is cat eye. Some are brown, some are blue. Okay, so this is the colored part. That's the iris. Then the center of the iris, you know, this black spot is the pupil. Okay, so pupil, iris, the other structures of the choroid. Okay, so we just look at the retina. Okay, as I mentioned earlier on, we are not going detail. Okay, because of the scope of the course. So we look at the retina. This is the retina. It's the innermost layer of the eye. Okay, for if you eat eye of goat or this, you see is that watery part. So that contains the light receptor. Okay, so at the rear of the eye, the retina is attached to what? The optic nerve. So this retina attached to the optic nerve is this optic nerve that now carried impulses, okay, from the light sensitive cells to the brain. And this optic nerve is very, very, very important. If there's any problem with this optic nerve, although the eye will be open, the person will be blind. And one of the challenges this optic nerve have is in this retina area, there is aqueous humor. And that humor, that fluid can have, there's a pressure, okay? It has its own pressure, like the way the blood has its pressure. The activities there has a pressure, okay? So if that pressure is too high, it can lead to the degeneration of this optic nerve. And when it degenerates, then the individual will not be able to see. Okay, so that's why this pressure has to be maintained, the pressure within the eye. Okay, so let's look at the skin. The skin is the organ of touch, touch, sensing, and all those things. That's the skin. Now, the skin have different receptors. The skin have 3 layers. You have the epithemy, the outermost layers. You have the dermis and the hypodermis. Epidermis is the outermost layer. In between is the dermis. Then you have the hypodermis, the innermost layer. Okay, so now under the skin, there are receptors. There is the thermoreceptor, from the word thermal, heat. There is the Meissner couple. The Meissner corpuscle is for sense touches. It's, when people touch you, that's what gets the signal. There is the nociceptor, that is pain, nociceptic pain. Okay, so when okay, so when you pinch somebody, is the nociceptor, okay, that receive that pinch. So it senses pain. Either like this pen. Now, if I use this pen and you see the way I did it, pinch my hand, it's the nociceptor that will say, this is a fairly sharp. Let me use this other pen. This pen is sharper. This nociceptor will say, this is the pen. And as he receives the signal, he sends it directly through to the brain. The brain will now say, this is painful. Remove your hand. Okay. So you have the Pacinial corpuscle. This one senses pressure. Okay, so these are the 5 organs, that's the sense organs, which are the window of the body. Okay, the window of the brain. So we did this briefly, not in full detail. Okay, but you can read up, give you some assignment. You can do some more extensive work, but it's because of within the scope of this course. So let's look at body systems. We've already mentioned that from the cell, we migrate to the tissue, we migrate to the organ, the coalition of organs based on their functions and based on their specificities now become the system. So we want to look at the system. Now, body system are a group of organs and tissue that work together to perform important job for the body. They do great work for the body. So some organs may be part of more than one body system. So you can have one organ, more than one body system. Some organ may be involved in urinary and reproductive system. Okay. Some organs may be involved in respiratory and another system. So you can have one organ being involved in more than one body system. So where they serve more than one function. Other organs and tissue, they only serve for that body system. So that there's organs that are just involved maybe in respiratory. They are not involved in any other system. Okay. Like the male sexual organ, the penis is involved in reproductive and in what? Excretory system. So it has 2 functions, both the female and the male. Okay. So all body systems are necessary for the organism to be able to survive and reproduce. Please take note of this. all body systems, they are necessary. Okay, so in this, we are going to discuss our different body systems. We're going to look at how they accomplish their tasks. We are going to look at how they function to make the individual, the animal, alive. You know, biology says that human beings are animals. So we look at how they function. Okay, oxygen is used in cellular respiration and excrete waste carbon dioxide. So it must be able to ingest and process food to obtain sugar and other things. So what we're saying is, for an organism, there are many, many things that it needs to be having or going for it to be alive. There are functions. One of the functions is you must breathe in and breathe out. So oxygen used for cellular respiration and excrete waste. Okay, the organism must be able to ingest and process food to obtain sugar and other nutrients. The body runs on glucose. The body runs on ATP. Okay, so the organism must be able to ingest and process food to obtain sugar and other nutrients. And how does it achieve that? It achieves that through the the organ system. The body must also be able to transport necessary substance. So when you eat the food, you must be able to transport even the air you breathe, it must be able to transport it to the necessary cells. Okay, different substance, different enzymes, different hormones, and different nutrients, they need to be transported in the body system. Oxygen needs to be transported, nutrients need to be transported to all cells for them to be alive, for them to remain. And also, when those cells have work, they produce ACP, they produce waste. Those wastes also need to be carried from that region and taken to where it's removed from the body. So clear toxic waste from the body, waste product from the body, for an organism to be alive, for an animal, for a human being to be alive, that human being must have a system of clearing toxic waste from the body. Okay, if you see people that have renal failure, you really see that, wow, this kidney, we are not conscious that it's there. Or people that have hepatic problem, this liver, we are not conscious that it's there. You begin to see the person's body swelling up just because the kidney stopped functioning for a day or two. And we really need to be grateful to God, because without our consciousness, all these things are working night and day. They work for 60 years, 80 years, 100 years, 120 years, auto working. Also, an organism has to respond, a being has to respond to the environment. If you don't respond to the environment, you won't know threat. You won't understand when there is threat. Okay, they must also be able to protect the body organs from the environment. When you don't protect the body from the environment, you go into extinction. Must also be able to fight infection. So for an organism, for a man to survive, there must be a system for fighting infection. For species to survive, each individual must be able to reproduce. Your great-great-great-grandfather has gone, but you see, you are here today listening because they were able to reproduce. So for organisms to continue, there must be a reproductive system. So we're going to see the organs, okay, and how they work in the body, and the tissue, how they work in the body, and how they work to accomplish these tasks. So these are types of the organs that are in the body and system. The body organs are grouped into organ systems, as I mentioned earlier on, based on the function they perform. Humans have 11 different organ systems. So these are the organ systems that we have. Okay. So we have the integumentary organ system, that's the skin, the hair, the nails. We have the skeletal, that's where you have the bones, the muscular. We have the smooth muscle, the cardiac muscle, and the skeletal muscle. We have the circulatory. Under the circulatory, the organs that are there, the heart, the arteries, the vein. Okay, so these in bracket are the organs that are in the system. So this system is called integumentary system. So we have the skin is there, the hair is there, the nail is there. The skeletal system, we have the bones that gives the framework, the infrastructural framework and stability of the body is the skeletal system that is hanging on. The muscular system, mostly for mobility, adjustment, reaction. So you have different types of muscle. You have the smooth muscle, you have the cardiac muscle, you have the skeletal muscle. So we have the circulatory system, circulating things around the body. Okay. In that under that system, we have the heart as an organ, we have the arteries and the vein as an organ. We have our respiratory system. Okay. We're going to discuss the system a little bit broader. Okay. So the lungs, the diaphragm, and the larynx, they are there, the pharynx, larynx, diaphragm, and the lungs. The digestive system, the organs that are there are the stomach, intestine, and liver. We have the urinary system, the kidney is there, the ureter is there, the bladder is there, the urethra is there. Immune system, we have the lymph nodes, the bone marrows, the thymus, and we have the nervous system, another very important system, where you have the brain, the spinal cords, and the nerves. Then we have the endocrine system, very important, sensitive system. You have the pituitary gland, the thyroid, the adrenals. These endocrine systems, sometimes look as if it's at the back of the system, but it's a very important system. Then you have the reproductive system for procreation, for reproduction, for human existent continuation. So you have the penis, you have the vagina, you have the prostate, and you have the uterus, sorry. Okay, so these are the systems in the body. So let's look at just an example. Let's look at example. Please, admin, how many minutes do I have left? Admin? Okay. So let's just look at example, at least anatomy tics with pictures. So you look at the integumentary system. So you see the hairs, the skin, and the nails. These are the integumentary system. Okay. These ones, they enclose the internal structures. They are sites of many sensory receptors. Okay, the sensory receptors in your body, a lot of them are on the integumentary system. So this is the skeletal system that supports and enable movement with muscular system. Okay, so you see the cartilages, the bones, and the joints. So these are the skeletal system. The muscular system also helps in movement and help in maintaining body temperature. Okay, so the muscular system works together with the skeletal system. Okay, so you have the skeletal muscle, you have the tendon, the ligaments, and all those things. Okay, so you have the nervous system. This one detects and protects sensory information, and it activates body responses. So under the nervous system, you have the brain, you have the spinal cord, and you have the peripheral nerves. So yeah, you have the central nervous system, you have the peripheral nervous system. So the spinal cord and the spinal nerves are responsible for the central nervous system, and then the peripheral nerves helps in coordinating activities of the peripheral nervous system. So we have the endocrine system. What do? They secrete hormones and they regulate bodily processes. This system it looks as if it's at the background, but it's very important. I've seen people that have hormonal dysfunction or endocrine dysfunction. Is really not a good thing to see. Okay, so you have the pituitary gland in the brain, more of the coordinating gland. You have the thyroid gland, you have the pancreas, adrenal glands, you have the testes. For ladies, you have the ovaries. Okay, so they secrete hormone and they regulate body processes. So after that, we have the cardiovascular system. Cardiovascular system is responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients to the tissue. It equalizes temperature in the body. So this is the cardiovascular system. So in the cardiovascular system, we have the heart, we have the blood vessels. So this is just a pictorial overview of the systems. Okay. So admin, how many minutes do we have left, please? Admin, how many minutes do we have left? Okay, so let's proceed. Let's look at the respiratory system. As we mentioned, this system is the system for the coordination of oxygens and the coordination of gases around the body. So they allow gas exchange between cell and the environment. In the environment, there are different gases. Okay, it's not all these gases that we need. Some of these gases are toxic to us. Some of these gases are what the cells need for its metabolism. Okay, so the respiratory system allow that coordination. Okay, so in the respiratory system, it includes the trachea, it includes the lung, and in our next class, I'll bring a picture of that so that you are able to relate what we are saying with the reality. So the function of the respiratory system is to take oxygen from the environment. So it takes oxygen from the environment and convert it to the form that the cell can use. Very important. Okay, so what it means is that the lungs, through your nasal cavity, when you breathe in, the lungs takes oxygen from the environment. Then it will rapidly diffuse it into the blood. Okay. Like people that have coronavirus, one of the problems they have is a problem with their respiratory system. The virus attacks the respiratory system. And you know, these cells that works in your body, they are aerobic. So that means they need oxygen for working, for breaking down. So when the coronavirus attacks the lungs, the respiratory system collapses. Oxygen cannot be transmitted inside to the cells. And when the cells has worked and broken down oxygen metabolic processes and you bring in carbon dioxide, it cannot also be transmitted outside. Then what happened? All the systems in the body collapse. Okay, so in human, it means oxygen, the lungs takes oxygen, it will diffuse it into the blood. Okay, how does it do this? It accomplishes this by passing large amount of blood over the gas exchange membrane. If you look at when I show the picture, you're going to see that on that, the lungs, the alveoli of the lungs, there is blood capillaries. So those blood capillaries, as the air comes, there is a lot of the oxygen goes around there. So there's, because the body needs a lot of oxygen, and much surface area, they will take it up and begin to transmit. So the body's whole blood volume passes over this membrane about once per minute. Wow, that's interesting. The whole body blood volume passes through this membrane once per minute, the whole blood you have in your body. So that helps to ensure that a lot of the oxygen that you breathe from outside, they are picked up and they are sending. Okay. So it could be argued that the respiratory system is one of the most important, and it's true, it's one of the most important systems. Without the oxygen, there will be no fuel. So oxygen is actually like a fuel for the cellular respiration. Okay, it's like a fuel for the cellular respiration. Without it, cells begin to die. Okay, so heart attack is deadly because when there is heart attack, there is problem with what? Blood circulation. And when there is problem with the blood circulation, it also impacts the respiratory system. Why? Because when there is problem with the blood circulation, enough blood is not picked up at that membrane, the membrane we talked about here. And when enough blood is not picked up at this membrane, what happens? The cells will not have blood. The cells will not have blood. And what happens when the cells don't have blood? They begin to die. So somebody can have a heart attack and they have a paralysis. in another place that is not even associated with that attack. Why? There is not enough air that gets there, enough oxygen. So when circulatory system stops working, our tissue begin to die from lack of oxygen. The lung also expels carbon dioxide. So beyond oxygen, the lung also expels carbon dioxide. As we mentioned, it takes in oxygen, takes it to the cellular systems. Then as those bloods are coming to those membranes, the blood is bringing carbon dioxide that is bringing from the cellular system, respiration. Then the carbon dioxide is mopped up. Then the nose exhales it. Okay. So if the lung is not expelling carbon dioxide, there'll be toxics. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, it kills like nothing else. Okay. So I think we'll be rounding up here today, and we want the admin to admin kindly unmute the students so that the student can ask their question at this point. Okay. Okay, so kindly you're going to be asking your question. Can you ask your questions? We've gone through a brief definition of anatomy and pharmacology. We've also mentioned what this curriculum is going to cover. Okay, so we've done the introduction today, and we've done the organs today. So we are starting on the systems. Okay, so today we just briefly we looked at the respiratory system. So if you have a question or if you have a comment or something you need to clarify, kindly ask now, because we have just 2 minutes to round up this class. Any question? I should expect a question or a comment so that I'll know that you people heard what were you hearing what I was saying? You need to know that you are involved in the class, because I'm not seeing you. I need to know you're involved in the class. Okay, we just have a minute left. It's possible there is no question from the students. So next week we'll be proceeding with the looking at the system, and next week we'll be going further. We'll just round up again on the respiratory system. Still have 1 or 2 things I will show us on the respiratory system. Then we can proceed with the other systems. Okay. So I want to thank everyone for participating in this class today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a brilliant, a wonderful week, and please keep safe and stay strong. Bye-bye.